Welcome to Literacy Talks, the podcast for literacy leaders and champions everywhere, brought to you by Reading Horizons. Literacy Talks is the place to discover new ideas, trends, insights, and practical strategies for helping all learners reach reading proficiency. Our hosts are Stacy Hurst, a professor at Southern Utah University and Chief Academic Advisor for Reading Horizons. Donell Pons, a recognized expert and advocate in literacy, dyslexia, and special education. And Lindsay Kemeny, an elementary classroom teacher, author, and speaker. Now, let's talk literacy.
Okay, welcome to this episode of Literacy Talks. It has become, I think, one of our favorites. By the way, I'm Stacy Hurst, and I'm joined by Donell Pons and Lindsay Kemeny, like we are every week. I'm assuming some things there. But what we get to talk about today is kind of a recap of the Plain Talk conference that we all just attended. It's been 2 weeks now. We've been home a whole week, so it's still kind of fresh in our minds, but we always like to have a conversation and share with you our takeaways about the experience. I especially, when we do these episodes, I'm thinking of my friends and colleagues who did not get to attend. So hopefully there's something you can get out of the conference, even though you weren't able to go. So let's just start off. I think I can't remember if this is my fourth or fifth Plain Talk conference, but Donell and Lindsay, how many have you been to now?
Ooh, I don't remember. I can't remember if this is my third or fourth. Fourth, maybe?
Donell, do you happen to know the answer?
I don't. I think I've done one more than Lindsay.
I thought this was a great one, though. I will say that over my time of attending Plain Talk, my first Plain Talk conference was the conference right before COVID. So I can tell you it was not as attended as it has been since we've been back and attending from COVID. So I know it's a conference that's gaining traction. It was sold out again this year. So if you're wanting to go next year, you need to register early. There was another important announcement that took place at this conference. And Lindsay, do you want to tell us about that?
My book? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
I had a launch party for, I have a resource book coming out. It's a resource companion to 7 Mighty Moves. And so it's 7 Mighty Moves reading resources. I have it right here if you're watching on YouTube. And I'm so excited. So Scholastic had a launch party for me during lunch on one of the days and during Plain Talk. And you guys, I don't know why, but anytime there's an event, I'm always stressing that no one will come.
And you do it every time.
Every time. And like the room that we were in was kind of farther away from like all the main action. And I was like, oh, great. Now it's going to be hard to get to, hard to find. No one's going to come. But guess what? There was a lot of people there. So it was so fun. It was really nice. So yeah, it was good times. And I did have, my 7 Mighty Moves resources are coming out March 18th. So I don't know when this is going to air. So it was a little early. So we couldn't have copies of the book there. But they surprised me with a copy. So I have like the very first copy in my hands right now of the book. And like that was a total surprise. I didn't know that they were going to have it. So I was so excited. I think, who was there? Stacy, I think you were. I ran into you right after because I was like, look, I got it.
Yeah, we took pictures. Yeah.
When I got it after. And Donell, you were there at my party, so you saw it too. And yeah, it was fun.
But then there was an announcement at that party.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yes.
Also.
So I had, okay. My special announcement was that I have a third book coming out this summer, Rock Your Literacy Block. So, yeah.
Which is so cool. I think a lot of people like this conference, especially, I feel like attracts a lot of practitioners, which we love. And that's really going to be valuable for them. I think even if you don't follow your literacy block to a T, Lindsay, like if somebody doesn't, they're still going to get great ideas.
Absolutely. And I say that a lot of times in that book because I'm like, hey, your blog doesn't need to look exactly like mine, but I want to share what's working for me. And I want to get you thinking about like how you structure things, how you transition from one thing to the other, how you're making the most of every minute.
Well, thank you for sharing. Also, anything about the conference in general that you guys have to add?
I think this conference is just, I love this conference. And I think they do such a good job of putting together a great conference with a lot of excitement, enthusiasm. We have like the marching band that comes through and the songs and always like this wide variety of really excellent speakers. I love it.
Yeah. And it's teacher student focused, which I love. You'll also see students. Students get up and they do a little vignette before they introduce the keynote every day, which is great because it centers you, focuses you. As you say, there's a band as well. It's always really terrific musicians, young people, and it focuses you on why you're there, who you're there for. And it's for the youth, right? For our young students to be able to help them reach their goals in literacy. And so your mind is always focused on why you're there. And then I love because there's a lot of camaraderie because as you say, Stacy, it's a great conference for teachers. And so there's a lot of teachers meeting up and maybe making friendships for the first time and getting to know each other so that they'll be able to support each other. I think it's great.
I forgot about I was just going to piggyback. I forgot about those students who introduced the keynotes. I thought this year was like the best. They were so good. They had these little skits prepared and it was really entertaining and really a fun way to introduce the keynote.
Yeah, and a way to keep us all centered, like Donell, like you were saying, on the reason we're there. I also really love the camaraderie. We got to see people that we haven't seen in real life for a while. I love that even something like at lunchtime, you're sitting with people that you've never met before, and always you have something in common. I meet new people every time. But I will say this year, there were actually people there that I was looking forward to seeing in real life that I didn't, because I think there's enough people there that you can't assume that you're going to see everyone there, but there were a lot of people.
I think 3,000, right? Wasn't there 3,000?
I think so.
They did a good job spacing us out, like a few years ago when we went, I think we talked about on this podcast how we were like, oh my gosh, it was so crowded. And there was a problem with people coming off the escalator with nowhere to go. And I think since then, they've done such a better job keeping us spread out. And we were even over in that whole other section of the hotel, which I don't think in the past we've ever had classes over there. So there were, anyways, it was great because there was a lot of space, I thought.
Yeah. And this year, though, they didn't do breakfast. Is that right? That was different.
Yeah.
But lunch, I felt like went a little smoother than it did last year. I remember they ran out of lunch sometimes, and just the way that they coordinated it this year, you had a certain room you were assigned to. And you did have to register for the sessions ahead of time. Did any of you have any trouble getting into sessions that you wanted to?
I was worried about that because I was really upset within like 2 hours. We got the email, like some of the sessions I wanted to go to were already full. And I'm like, no, I really wanted to go to that. But the day of, I went and they have kind of I'm calling them a bouncer for each room and who's scanning your badge. And, I'm like, I'm not in here. Can I get in? And they would be like, well, just come back like 5 minutes after, or 10 minutes after. And if there's space, we'll let you in. And I was able to get in like the two that I tried. So that was good.
I thought the app was really great too, because I did that. I'd start out, well, actually didn't do this very often, but if you're in a session and you're like, oh, this isn't quite what I expected it. So then you could look to see which sessions still had space, which was handy in the moment.
And I don't know what it was this year, you guys, but I was on fire. I should have gone to Vegas with this kind of luck because I feel like I hit the jackpot on every single one. And that doesn't usually happen. Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think it was great. And Donell, right before we started recording, you were pointing out too that a lot of the sessions this year I noticed were on maybe we could say the upper strands of the rope. Lots on writing and syntax and comprehension. And at first I thought it was just, those were the ones I was noticing because that's what I'm focusing on right now. But it seemed like there were a lot of offerings in those areas.
I noticed that too. There were a lot. And the app, did anyone play there's like a game, I think, that they were playing on the app. I didn't play it, but did anyone see
I
that?
saw it. Yeah.
Lindsay, you know who you're talking to. I didn't play the game.
Yeah. I know. I think we're all like the three of us were also focused on get to the session, learn. And I think the game was about like going, like maybe talking to so many people at the booths and finding out information about them or something. And I mean, I think it would be fun. It was just like there's so many other things to do during the conference. So
yeah, that's true. And then some things that we each kind of have our own little thing about. Lindsay, do you want to talk about the program?
Yes. I have it right here. I saved it.
Me too.
Because I need my paper program when I go to a conference. Donell has hers too. And so I was so excited because I'm like, oh, they have the paper program. And I don't know, I'm just kind of a dinosaur about these things. Like I know there's the app, but for me, it's easier. I want my program. I can star it. I can easily see all my selections and where they're going to be. And what I love about this particular program is it's small. Like it's half page. It's like instead of like a huge one, which is perfect. Fits in your hand as you're walking from place to place. So
yeah, I thought they did a very good job of that. And that was exactly what you just heard from Lindsay was exactly her reaction when we got the bags. So I usually comment on the bags, and these bags are stellar. They're big. They're good
zippers.
Yeah. And because bags are not Donell's thing, I got 2 of them. So I'm super happy about that.
And there were some good goodies inside the bags too.
Yeah, I thought so too. I actually got Donell's innards too of her bag, which I was grateful for.
You did? Did you get the little like tackle box thing with all that?
Oh no, she kept that, right?
I did. I kept the tackle box.
I mean, that was great.
And that was from the Center for Literacy and Learning, right? They had this little mini tackle box, you guys, and it had like a mini stapler. It was so cute. A little Post-it note, little teeny tape. Oh my gosh.
Mini staples? Yeah.
Yes.
No. Donell she is selective.
Selective.
But so I did not get 2 of those, but
okay. She kept that. It was a good.
But the bag, it was worth it. Having 2 of those for sure. Okay, so now let's get to like the meat of it all, the sessions. What sessions stand out to you? Should we just go day 1, day 2, day 3? Maybe we'll just take turns talking about a session at a time that we attended and some key takeaways.
First day, you got to mention that in the grand ballroom, there was Anita Archer. And I don't care what you say. She's phenomenal. I mean, I can always do a little Anita Archer and always have a good day. And that's just the thing about her. She's so steady and consistent and just reminds you of those things that you've heard her say for a long time, but it's always good to hear her say it again. And so I just appreciate a session with her. It was fun to have her there. But then I went on to a session that I did want to mention, and that was John Bennett's and Devin Kearns. And some folks will probably be familiar with Devin Kearns, but John Bennett's is in a school setting and they're working together. And it was on bridging the gap and aligning Tier 1 and Tier 2 for reading success. And so Devin Kearns and John Bennett have actually worked together on developing a spreadsheet that they then shared with those who attended the session and said, please use it and then give us feedback. But it's a spreadsheet that helps you determine what aspects might be lacking in your Tier 2 or your Tier 1 and to help get your materials to talk to each other through Tier 1 and Tier 2, which I thought was fantastic. Boy, we needed this conversation for a long time. So they did a great job of presenting. Opened it up for questions. Of course, there were plenty of questions, but then it really was take this and test drive it and let's hear back. So I'm hoping there's another session where we get back together and say, okay, here's what works, here's what doesn't work. It's great.
And I attended that session too. So I'll just add quickly about that. That's how things should be developed. Yeah. Like from people who are really aware of those situations. And like I noticed they would even have recommendations for changing certain wording from one program to a next, from Tier 1 to Tier 2. And it was just a very thorough way to look at it. Yeah. Lindsay, what about you?
I went to Carol Tolman, and I don't think I've heard her present live before, but she was great. She was talking about the upper strands of Scarborough's reading rope. So the title was about language structures and verbal reasoning. And I remember she's like standing up on a chair, and she has ropes, and she has all these ropes around her talking about each strand. And so, one thing interesting I thought she was sharing was about talking about like what makes a sentence difficult. So she really focused a lot on the sentence level and what makes a sentence difficult to understand. There's a few things: the number of propositions or idea units in the sentence, the distance between the subject and the verb, that can make it difficult, and the order of the subject, verb, object, the order of them. And so that was really interesting. And she was showing us actions, like, when you, it's a capital letter. And so she would have her hands go up tall, and then the period, and she would do a little like halt stop with her hand. And I've never really done the hand actions, and just reminded me that I see teachers do that a lot. It's so fun and cute. And so I was like, I need to try that with my students. So as we say the sentence verbally, we can do those little actions to help us remember we need a capital at the beginning and then a stop at the end, or you could do like a question mark or, exclamation point. So
very, very cool. It sounds great. She is a great presenter. The first session I attended was also on comprehension. It was called Transformational Comprehension Results for All Children. And I am going to slaughter this last name, but I'm going to give it a go. It was by Kay Wijakumar. Maybe I said it right, actually.
Wijakumar.
Wijakumar, yeah. And she's very blunt, straightforward. In fact, she was talking about the NAEP scores. And she said, the patient is dead. Okay, people, the patient is dead. So she was talking about how to facilitate comprehension in students. She has a well-tested strategy, and these were my takeaways. Text structures, so there's a big focus on that, should be used to determine the main idea. Then from the main idea, extend that into a summary, and then extrapolate inferences. And so she says, if you get the main idea correct, then you can use it to get all the other strategies. So she's saying, get the kids to think. Don't reset the purpose. The purpose is comprehension is the purpose. That's why we're reading. So anyway, I thought it was really insightful. And she's had a lot of great success. I know she mentioned that Elsa Cardenas-Hagen has been involved with this approach, and they have a lot of really good research and results from it. So,
yeah. So if you have if you get the Reading League Journal, I'm pretty sure she has an article. I'm pretty sure it was last year, the 2024. I don't remember which one, but she has one on this. It's called her like knowledge acquisition framework, I think.
Yeah,
does that sound right? And yeah. And then we talked about it. If you guys go back and listen to our Reading League summary from just last fall, 2024, I went to a session on that too. So you can get like a double dose and kind of dig into that a bit more. But yeah, she's had she has a lot of strong evidence to back up what she's doing.
Yeah, it sounds very compelling. And it is knowledge acquisition and transformation. So yeah.
Transformation. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
All right. Donell.
And just one that gets an admirable mention, so it was one of the first ones that I attended as well, was on handwriting. And I just do not think we can talk about it enough because it kind of got tossed to the wayside for a bit and then brought back as people realized, oh yeah, there's actually a lot of research that supports the fact that good handwriting, we should spend some time on that because it actually helps students, and particularly when it comes down the road for their writing. And so it was Sean Datchuk. I hope I'm doing his name some justice. And he is with the Iowa Reading Research Center. And he introduced folks in that session to some free resources, which I thought were great. And one of them is called Literacy Lifter. So if you just type that in, Literacy Lifter, it's some free resources that you can get. And it's about how to teach handwriting if you don't have a program, or you can even look at the research to make sure, am I doing that correctly? Or there's some things I could change or tweak. They say they're going to come out with one that's for cursive, because we know that cursive writing is also very important, serves a purpose. And that will be in April, that will have a cursive lifter. And it comes with videos. So it'll do the whole thing for you if you don't have something. And again, these are free resources. And they're also making it so that it can align to your phonics program as well. So they're trying to make those things come together. So I appreciate that people are doing this thoughtful, right, reflection about, okay, what would really be helpful or useful for teachers? Well, it'd be nice if they could get it to adapt with what they're teaching in their phonics. So I like that when I see it.
I went to a session on handwriting too. It was by Jane Ashby, letter formation. And I love that she mentioned that letter knowledge is letter recognition and letter formation. So students need both. And we know the letter formation, retrieving that from memory, is harder than just recognizing like that's a B or D or whatever. But when we're focusing on that letter formation, that is going to strengthen them being able to recall the name and the sound. And so it's really important. But there's something that she said that I had never heard before, and I thought it was really interesting. She said that our attention is elevated, like she says cognitive research shows this, but I didn't get a citation, but attention is elevated at something that's between your hands. So she was saying that's why, like, if they're right-handed, they're going to hold the paper with the left hand, and then they have the right hand, and their attention naturally is going to pay more attention to what's in the middle. And obviously the opposite if you're left-handed, where you're holding the paper with your right hand and you have your pencil with your left, and then your attention is focused on what's in the middle. And I just thought that was interesting. I had never heard that before. And she talked about those short sessions, 2 to 3 minutes for handwriting, distributed practice. It's something I always do. And we've talked about this before, like just a few letters. You don't need to do rows and rows of like an A, because then they start to get sloppy, I've noticed. So we'd rather have like a few. When in my classroom, I'm like, okay, write 3 lowercase A's, and attending to that letter formation, correct letter formation.
Yeah, that's awesome. Another session from day 1, which I won't even spend a ton of time at all talking about because it's in the Reading League Journal, but it is 17 misconceptions about the science of reading. And Sharon Vaughn did that one. So I recommend that article to anyone. It was a good summary of that. I attended on day 1, Donell, we both attended Tim Odegaard.
Yeah, I was going to say, give a shout out to Dr. Tim Odegaard. That was a great presentation.
That was very powerful.
Oh, it was. Okay, so we've seen him do a similar presentation, and that was at Big Sky. And it was very compelling then, too. And then he's tweaked it a little bit and has even more research. But Tim talks about that emotional, social impact of reading difficulties. And it's even, he makes a very good case for child neglect. When we do not intervene and help young people learn to read, it is equivalent to the impact on those young people is equivalent to child neglect. It was very, very powerful.
Yeah. And the research he shared was a longitudinal study from 3 different countries. And I might be getting some of this incorrect, but they first of all asked the question, do any of these issues, and they had things like being bullied, depression, anxiety, ADD, how much of an impact do they have on reading, on learning to read? And in most cases, it was very little, with the exception of attention, which makes sense, right? It was all, no, it doesn't really impact learning how to read. However, then they flipped the question and said, how much of if all these things, anxiety, depression, attention, are negatively impacted by not being able to read? And 100% it was yes. They all exacerbate. Not knowing how to read exacerbates or causes some of those issues. And so that was really compelling to me.
And not to lose sight, right? Because there are a lot of challenges to staying the course, to making sure that we don't slide, right? And we don't take our attention off of. And so I thought it was a really great presentation. I hope he continues to have that available to folks.
Yeah. And we were able to talk to him afterwards. And Dr. Odegaard, if you're listening, thank you for the conversation, because it did help put on a perspective as well of it could help explain why some children are more resilient when they experience those, what we call ACEs in their life, because having access to knowing how to read actually helps them cope with those adverse experiences. So it did kind of just put a big exclamation mark on why reading is so important.
Yeah. And mentorship. Didn't you find that was also very interesting that he brings out is the importance of having a peer-to-peer mentorship, how important that was.
Yeah, very impactful.
Educators and administrators know how important it is to close the gaps in foundational literacy skills for older learners. Reading Horizons Elevate is designed to help students in grades 4 through 12 and beyond master foundational skills they may have missed. By combining direct instruction with engaging age-appropriate software, Reading Horizons Elevate makes reading proficiency attainable for older learners. Helping students build a strong literacy foundation is key to unlocking success across all academic subjects. Visit readinghorizons.com/elevate to learn more.
Lindsay, what else did you attend?
Well, the next day we had Marianne Wolf, who I just think hit it out of the park. She was so great. I love listening to her. And something she said that I really liked was, she said, we should be united in our love of books. And I loved that. I thought that was such a great sentiment, right? Yes. We should be united in that love of, we love books. We love teaching our kids to read. We want them to learn to read so that they have the opportunity to love it, right?
Yeah. And I love that she also said that we are connectivists. We connect things. All pieces are connected. Look at all the processes parts for fluency. It's not only what you read, but how you read. So connecting everything. I thought that was also important.
Yeah, which is very apparent in her possum approach, helping us to remember those things. And you just can't not pay attention when Marianne Wolf is presenting because she's so animated and energetic. There are sometimes it makes me tired to watch her present. But she is fantastic. And speaking of really engaging people, I did attend Lynn Stone's session. And she, of course, was focusing on grammar and writing and how important that is. A couple of big takeaways from her session was she cited the research that the meta-analysis that said the effects of writing on learning, no matter what the topic is, science, social studies, or math, is significant. Like it really improves all learning, no matter what the content is. And then she said this about grammar, which really resonated with me because I feel like, no shade to my junior, middle school, junior high teachers, but I don't really think I got great instruction when it comes to grammar. So she said, what grows naturally, as far as grammar is concerned, is just a small part of what adults need to function properly in the modern world. And that resonated with me because we can get by, we can recognize improper grammar, but if we really have a grasp on the language and we know more about it explicitly, then we have more opportunities available to us for reading and writing. But I thought that was really cool. Also, she's very engaging and funny all the time.
That second day, I went to Pam Kastner. I love Pam Kastner. She gave a great presentation. It was geared towards upper grades, but I went anyway, and I definitely found a lot of things, relevant to me as a first grade teacher. And I love that she says, and if you follow her online or anything, you see that she's been posting this a lot lately. Integrate, don't isolate, right? We need to integrate those skills and not just teach everything in these like silos.
Yeah, I went to that same presentation at the Reading League conference, and I really thought this is one thing I just love about Pam Kastner, she can understand a topic so well that she makes it simple. Third to fifth grade reading, that's a big topic, but she just made it like, here's how you do it. This is what's important. I thought it was really great. Donell.
Yeah, and on Thursday, I saw Nicole Ormandy, who's with Ames, and she talked about assessments for writing and driving instruction. And that was really good. It was very good, down to earth information that she shared. Again, a lot of those resources are available free on their website. And that's with the AIM Institute. And then I also saw Elfriede Hebert. We've had her as a guest on the podcast. She was great with the text project. This time she was addressing AI and decodable text. And she talked about how she has worked very hard to come up with correct prompts. Just knowing enough about decodable text and working with AI isn't enough. Then there was a whole lot of experimentation about getting the correct way in which to work with AI. And she was willing to share a lot of that with folks. So she said, email me, I'll share that with you. I thought that was great that she'd done that homework. She also said, we make this assumption that we can just do a little prompt into AI, it'll give us decodable text. But she said a lot of that decodable text has not been entered into a lot of our language models. Some of it's behind paywalls and such and different things. And she said it's not as prolific as you would think. And so she's had to do a lot of homework. Anyway, that was a really good one. And then I did another round of Marianne Wolf, because then she went out and did a breakout session, and she was going to talk about fluency and its multi-component intervention, the possum. And instead, she treated us to an impromptu session on the impact of this digital age that we're living in and all the reading, skimming that we do online, and what it does in terms of deep reading and being able to get to deep reading and comprehension. And it was very good. She's always good.
Speaking of technology, I went to one that was called EdTech and the Science of Literacy Development, Results from a Meta-Analysis. So there wasn't anything really revelatory shared. I think most of us who've used tech in the education space would not have been surprised by any of the findings, but one was 73% of teachers say that there's not enough support for EdTech and that we need more research on this, specifically on technology for writing and language development. And there were some programs in this meta-analysis that are less effective than if students didn't use them at all. So it actually, I thought that was a little bit scary, honestly. And then there's a lot we still don't know about it, but I thought that was really interesting. And it sounds like Dr. Hebert and Marianne Wolf touched on maybe some of the things to be aware of too.
Yeah, because sometimes I think there's this attitude that like technology, it's like, oh, that's the end all be all, or like, oh, you need to have the newest shiny thing in your classroom. So that's an interesting check to reality there, where sometimes it's not, and we need to be a little more careful before jumping into something.
Yeah. And thinking about, I think you said it at the beginning, Lindsay, when you were talking about your third book, just how can we make our instruction more efficient? And I think there are some programs that students spend an awful lot of time on the computer for, and I don't know if that's the best use of our instructional time. And it could be that it is, but we don't really have a ton of research for that yet. And I think especially it's a critical conversation to have when brains are developing. And I think Marianne Wolf calls that out really well in her book, Read or Come Home, because of the impact that having access to too much technology has on language development.
Well, it's sad to me, this is, I guess, off topic a little bit, but, we had indoor recess a couple weeks ago, and I usually, this particular day, one child asked me, can I get on the iPad during this indoor recess? And I'm like, sure. And then as everyone came in this was after lunch, they all got on the iPad, and I looked around and I'm like, this is so sad. They're all on the iPad and no one is talking and it's just silent, but it's technically recess. It just had to be indoor recess because of the weather. And I'm like, next time I'm saying no when they ask me if they can get on the iPad, I'm going to say no because I would rather a noisy classroom during this time because I want them to practice their social skills and their oral language skills, and I want them to play with the toys and the the other things. But I just remember looking around being like, this is sad.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think now we did have to leave on Friday. I think we got to attend one session. Is that right? Before we had to leave to catch our flight. And I did go to Teaching Sentence Level Writing and Vocabulary Explicitly and Efficiently by Dr. Lorraine Hammond. It was very good. And I should mention the day before, I had gone to Dr. Pamela Snow's session as well. So Australia was well represented this conference for sure.
Yeah, those were good presentations too.
Yeah, they were great. What did you go to on Friday morning?
Well, the keynote was Jake Daggett, and I was just looking forward to that. I just absolutely love him. He brings so much energy and enthusiasm. I'm like, oh my gosh, you must have been the most fun teacher. He's not in the classroom anymore, but I mean, he's still in the classroom because he's helping like coach other teachers and do all the things. But wow, what energy he has, and really just showing us, ideas to make your lessons a little more engaging, get everyone participating. I wrote down, quote unquote, bundle it up, baby. Do you remember that, Donell?
Yes.
So like he just had us, chanting and singing and laughing, and it felt so good to laugh. Like I was just laughing and laughing. It was a really fun session.
Yeah, he definitely has high energy. I first learned of him on TikTok, and then he was on the Kelly Clarkson show. And I think I saw a news story about that. So yeah, he is very worthwhile to Google.
A warning he had, I just looked at my notes. He said, comparison is deadly. And I think that's important to remember as teachers, not to compare yourselves to others, but focus on being the best you can be.
Good advice for our students too, huh? Ourselves and our students.
Mm-hmm.
Devin Kearns again. So he was one I popped in on. I wished I could have stayed because he had some really good conversation going on. And the session was titled, I want to get the title because it didn't do justice, Critical Concepts for Students versus Foundational Facts for Teachers. What do students need to learn and what do only teachers need to know? But actually, it was very compelling. He put up a slide, or he had a PowerPoint, and the first one he showed, it had a bunch of different concepts about reading. So it's like, left and right brain, what's occurring and what information is being shared. There were a few slides on that. And then he had a few slides on knowing some really intricate concepts about why sounds are the way they are and how different letters impact each other. And so he had a bunch of them. And then he had 3 spots. And he said, what does a reading researcher need to know? What does a teacher need to know? And what do students need to know out of these things that we've just seen up here? And there was some, debate going on. Well, I don't know. In the end, settled on just 2 of those for the reading researcher, almost everything except for 1 for the teacher, and just 2 of those for the student. 2 of those concepts would be useful for the student. So it really was a great visual for the fact of how much a teacher who really has been trained, supported, and is in that classroom getting everything that teacher needs in order to be the great reading teacher, what it takes. And I thought that first stood out to me. And then what also stood out to me is that we're oftentimes spending a lot of time, even for teachers, giving them the information that's not really going to be useful or helpful to them in the classroom because they're already responsible for the majority. So that was the other thing I was thinking about is be really careful about what you think what you're going to tell a teacher that they need to know. That was important, really be thoughtful about it. And then also on the student side is when is it too much information that we're sharing? And I think you've got to think about that a lot. It's good.
Yeah, which kind of calls into, I wouldn't say question, but focus, the importance of the way that we're providing professional development for our teachers. And I can't remember which session I was in. It might have been Sharon Vaughn that said we are behind with professional development. And some of that might be because we get too mired in things that may not be the important thing to know. Yeah. Okay, so as we are talking about this, or even as we left the conference, what did you leave thinking I'm going to put into action from what I learned in the conference? I will start by saying generally, I get to write a new course that will be focused on vocabulary, writing, and comprehension. So that's one reason I attended all of those sessions. So I will be very intentionally applying what I learned to do, create a whole new course. But what about you guys?
I think, that's kind of hard. But I think, which I didn't even mention this, I forgot to mention this session I went to by Margie Gillis. But it kind of there were similar themes throughout many of the ones I went to. And that is like this art of conversation and this basis of oral language. And I'm always telling my students, like, if you can't say it, you can't write it. And so we say it first. And, but besides, just because I do a lot of this in preparation for writing, but I really like the idea of helping our students really learn the art of conversation. So those turn and talks that we do all the time, I feel like I need to do a little more work in helping them be better speakers and listeners as they are talking with the partner, and encouraging them to like talk in full sentences, and listen and expand to an idea that their partner has presented. So I don't know, that's something I've just been thinking about that I need to work on.
I love that.
It's interesting, Lindsay, because I just listened to a podcast by a behavioral scientist who talked about how when they were young, their mother would ask them, who asked you a really good question today and what was it? It was always asking them to think about the questions they were being asked. And she said, I've applied this to my children as well as to my students, asking them, let's list the really great questions we were asked today. And I thought, I ought to try that. That sounds like a good activity. But the takeaway for me, I mean, there were quite a few. I didn't even mention one, too, Lindsay, that come to mind. I am already using and applying. Lorraine Hammond and Jan Hasbrook, they did one where they were supporting students to achieve reading fluency, but it was way more than that. They had a study that was being conducted in Australia. They just quickly flashed up some of the key points and then showed some teaching. The engagement was high, and it was 72 responses by the students within so many minutes of teaching. I mean, it was phenomenal for me. And I just really, it reinvigorated how much you need to have your students. It's really for them, right? And so you need to have them engaged, and they need to be talking, and how much more I could do that in my teaching. So right away I was like, yeah, I'm going to apply that one. And then the handwriting, I tell you, I'm on it, guys. This one's my big thing lately and I work with older students who handwriting is still a challenge, and just making a few changes and going back and saying, what can I do to really support this student? Because clearly they didn't receive what they needed. And can I try some of these things for them now? And how much it really does help. And so, really motivated.
Yeah. And I think I think Lynn Stone mentioned this when she was talking about handwriting. It forces our brain to slow down. And that's when the information has the opportunity to get into our long-term memory. So,
yeah, the connections you make, right?
Yeah, for sure. Any other things you want to implement based on what you learned?
All of the great things.
Yeah, I know.
Everything. We want to implement everything.
All the things. Yes. Well, and one question that we talked about before was, what are some challenges and considerations to applying what we've seen? And for me, I've feeling at this point pretty overwhelmed because, again, I get to apply it to a whole course, but how do you make that palatable, understandable enough for students to apply to then teach their students? I think I have my work cut out for me, but I have a lot of good resources, which I think will be very helpful. So I was glad for that. What about you guys? Challenges? Time
is always a challenge in the classroom. We never have enough time to implement all the things that you're seeing. So,
yep, I would agree. Just time.
That's a good challenge. That's pretty ubiquitous, right? Okay. Anything else that you guys want to share about the conference in general or our experience with it?
I just love Plain Talk. I hope we can go next year. I just think they do such an excellent job, and such like high caliber speakers. It's wonderful.
It's well thought out.
I agree. And I'd have to say too, right? Related, unrelated, I don't know. We just got the most recent NAEP scores in Louisiana, made some really impressive gains. And so I think, this is housed in Louisiana. It's always been there. I appreciated in the program learning about the history of the conference as well. And I just think it's really great for educators, no matter where you are. But what a great offering for us. So thank you. And yes, I hope we get to go next year too. We did have, we didn't really talk about the vendors, but they did have a separate hall for all of that. What did you guys think about that? I don't think I really got to see a ton of that, but
I thought it was fun. It's better than, before they had them all in the hallways. And remember, that's how it was all jam packed. So it was kind of nice that they had them in a room, but they had some out in the hallway in that other area too. And it's fun. I always love exploring the different offerings by different companies. I think it's exciting because I feel like we're getting better and better things out there. So it's great.
Yeah, I agree. Donell, did you happen to see anything in the vendor hall that was new and exciting, or?
No, just I'd agree with Lindsay that it's really fun to see those things offered and for teachers to be able to see them hands-on and being given these opportunities and being treated like professionals, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, I do because they really do cater to the teacher in that sense, right? Which sometimes isn't the thing, because they're most often, companies are usually having conversations with people who sign the POs. So I do love that there were a lot of things for teachers. I saw teachers with their bags full. So, not to beat a dead horse, but those bags were amazing and they were big. So you could fit a lot of swag in them, a lot of free stuff for sure. So, on that note, we will end this recap for this year's conference of Plain Talk. We'll be sure to do the same thing for next year's conference. And we have a couple other conferences coming up before then. So we look forward to having you join us for recaps of those conferences too. And in the meantime, we hope you'll join us for the next episode of Literacy Talks.
Thanks for joining us today. Literacy Talks comes to you from Reading Horizons, where literacy momentum begins. Visit readinghorizons.com/literacy talks to access episodes and resources to support your journey in the science of reading.